I wanted to quickly talk about worship. It would make sense because we're the worship team. But if you look at the scriptures, especially the book of Psalms, the book of Psalms is literally a worship manual for us. It's like worship 101. It teaches many different things about how, why, all of these different things. But there is something that I hold on to. And I really want us to think about this morning as we reflect on God's presence and what worship has to do with that. So if you would read with me, or I'll read it out loud for you. This is Psalms 22:3. It says, "Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel." If you think about what that means, that God is within our praises. Our praises welcome God in. They invite Him in. And this is God's church. And what we do is holy. And so when you're thinking, I'm not sure if I want to sing this morning, remember what it's for. God lives within those praises. God comes to church with us and is invited in by us through those praises. Maybe singing is not something that is something you regularly do or enjoy, but meditate on those words. Understand the importance of it. We worship a holy God. A God who is set apart from all. And the scripture tells us that He lives within our worship. So would you stand this morning as we worship reverently to a holy God?
Worthy
great, mighty, and holy God. You are set apart. There is none like you. And God, your presence is here. We've called you in. So God, be here. Be in this place. It is in your Son's amazing name that we pray. Amen.
Please be seated this morning. Today is going to be a little bit different, folks. It's not going to be the typical kind of Sunday where we sing a couple of songs, I do my talk, and then everybody goes home. It's a little bit different than that today. This morning, our journey through worship is going to mirror a passage that we're going to be talking about. And I think worship is the naturally induced thing. And so we're going to be walking the message and the songs together as we walk through this passage in Leviticus 16. So I'm going to ask if you turn there. If you have a Bible on your lap, please grab Leviticus 16. If you're wondering where on earth Leviticus is, because you're not that religious-y, it's very early on in the Bible. All right, so you're just a couple books in there. Leviticus 16. The first movement of today's message, this worship, has already been introduced very beautifully with a song that many of us grew up singing. It's the old hymn, Holy, Holy, Holy. There's a phrase in that song that stood out to me especially for today. And you'll notice in almost any work, whether it's poetic or whether it's a lyric, whether it's something in the scriptures, if it's something that somebody writes something down, if something is repeated, it's most often intentional, because it means it's the point of emphasis, it's what's going on. And you see those first three words, holy, 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 it's actually stealing those words from the angels that are in heaven. The scriptures talk about that when the angels would speak of God, they would be holy. And so this song adopts that, but there's something in this song that gets repeated as well. It's a certain phrase that really sticks to me very intensely today. It's the phrase, merciful and mighty. Merciful and mighty. Most of us love the merciful character of God. We can find our focus, we can sing a little louder, we cry a little longer with joy when we get to attach ourselves to that part of God, His character, that He is merciful. We are very quick to find that part about God, but too few of us probably fully appreciate the mighty part. We like the mercy part. The mighty part, sometimes we don't want to see that part, right? Well, in this first movement of the worship, we're going to spend some time talking about the mighty holiness of God and why if we don't have that, we don't have anything else that follows. There is nothing really worth singing about, certainly nothing to praise, certainly nothing to understand if we don't have it in the context of the God's mighty holiness. His holiness, His presence is dangerously pure. I mean that in the wholest possible, most beautiful way, most fearful way as well. His presence, His holy presence is dangerously pure. If you have a Bible, I want you to look to Leviticus chapter 16. If you don't have a Bible, you can follow along on the screen. All these scriptures will be there, and we're going to work our way through some stuff that I think is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Especially if you're new to church, this might be like, wow, that's a whole lot of stuff. If you're not new to church, you might be saying, I never knew that. That's where that's from. And you're going to start connecting dots. But each and every one of us need this message today. Leviticus 16, verse 1. It says, the Lord spoke to Moses after the death of Aaron's two sons. We're going to talk about that in a second. After the death of Aaron's two sons, who died after they entered the Lord's presence. Okay? You guys remember, Pastor Bob, you did this sermon, right, a couple weeks ago? Was that a good sermon, by the way? 3 people said yeah. 3 people said yes, it was phenomenal. Okay, he had a tough job. He got the call from the bullpen that afternoon, the afternoon before, to preach a sermon about God killing people. So usually not the best call you want to get. But here it says that Aaron's 2 sons died, who died after they entered the Lord's presence, and they burned the wrong kind of fire before Him. We're going to talk about that. We'll explain in a second. The Lord said to Moses, warn your brother Aaron. Moses, tell your brother Aaron, who's the high priest, not to enter the most holy place behind the inner curtain just whenever he chooses. Okay, this is immediately after this has happened. His 2 sons, Aaron's 2 sons, who are priests as well, they just died, and God says, Moses, tell their dad, the high priest, tell them not to just walk in behind the curtain just whenever they want to do it. It says here, if he does, he will die. For the ark's cover, the place of atonement, is there, and I myself am present. The presence of God. Beautiful songs are sung about it. Amazing scriptures speak of it. He says, I myself am present in the cloud right there above the atonement cover. Well, if you were here 2 Sundays ago when Pastor Bob spoke, you would have heard about those 2 men, Nadab and Abihu. All right? Nadab and Abihu, young priests, and they were sons of that high priest Aaron, who Moses is speaking to now on behalf of God. Those 2 were priests themselves. Well, the passage you would have heard from that day pointed out that Nadab and Abihu, it says this, disobeyed the Lord by burning before him the wrong kind of fire, different than he had commanded. That's what the passage says. They burned something different than he commanded them to burn. Frankly, the passage gives theologians absolute fits because it doesn't give much of an explanation as to what burning the wrong kind of fire would mean. I know there's some purists there. How many of you guys choose to use charcoal? Charcoal is the only way to grill, right? That's the only holy way. Everybody else does it wrong if they use propane, right? That's probably the one way I could say there's a purity of fire for some people and not for another. But it doesn't really give much explanation in the scriptures as to why 2 guys ought to die because they burned the wrong kind of fire. All we find out is this. The people who he's speaking to, the original audience of this passage, would have gotten it enough, and at least it would be summed up this way. There was an act of disregard for God and his presence. It's just something as simple as that. Seemingly, the only expansion that happens on this idea is in today's passage. This idea of Nadab and Abihu, their sin, God gives a warning to Moses to pass on to Aaron, who's the high priest, who's also their dad. Again, his 2 kids have just died. He's in all his garb. He's looking at them dead, and he's thinking, what? But God says, tell him this. Immediately after this death, God says this, they entered the Lord's presence. They entered the Lord's presence, and they burned the wrong kind of fire before him. The Lord said to Moses, warn your brother Aaron not to enter the most holy place behind the inner curtain, just whenever he chooses. If he does, he'll die. This is what we just read a moment ago. This curtain thing has something to do with this. There is a disregard, whether there's some kind of a strange fire or not, the thing that they're burning as an act of worship or incense or whatever it might be, is really a secondary issue that they entered into the curtain that they were not allowed to go through, because right on the other side of this curtain was the actual presence of God, where the place of atonement sat. And they broke through there. This is going to matter soon as we walk our way through this. This idea of a curtain that separates some part of worship and the actual presence of God. Those 2 die because they just disregarded God's presence. They took him too lightly. For the time being, though, Moses doesn't give a lot of explanation about why something like that, fires, curtains like that, would offend God. It just did. He doesn't give a lot of explanation for you and I today, 3,000 plus years later. He doesn't give it just that's what makes it newsworthy. We're hearing about it today because it was newsworthy. And the essence of the report is this. God can, this is true for today, God can and he will take the lives of people who take him too lightly. Now, that doesn't fit so easily with I love the merciful part of God. The merciful and mighty part, I don't know. We love the mercy part, but the mercy makes no sense without the mighty. And here we find out it's possible to take God too lightly. Meaning, you and I could have walked in here today taking this experience of the presence of God too lightly. I guess just if you're doing a little check on the needle where it's at in your heart, I'd say, I'm going to pay attention a little more tight to God today. I don't know why today, but certainly there's something to be paid attention to. People who come into his presence casually, distracted, with their own ideas of how to deal with him, indifferently, when they come to him carelessly, or what I like to call what I do most of the time when I'm coming to church. Usually how I handle it when I'm talking to him, shamefully, that's what I say, but that's what's going on. Something that happens almost every single week in any given church all across the planet. God has taken the lives of people who have done far less than what I routinely do in worship every single Sunday when I gather together with his people. I sit in that place and sometimes my head's in another place. something that's going on that week, or my message, I'm getting focused on my message, and I'm really paying very little attention to God, who took the lives of people who were trying to worship him but just didn't do it with enough intensity, enough focus, and enough caution with the dangerous purity and holiness of God's presence. We often treat God's presence as if his only character quality is to be merciful and not necessarily to be mighty. That's what happened with these two guys. And it is a cautionary tale for us today. For all we can say about God's dangerous power, we don't really expect it out of him. There will be songs that we'll sing, maybe even today, I don't know, certainly next week, the week coming, we'll gather together as a church and we'll sing songs about how powerful that God is. But a lot of times we just don't expect it out of him. We much too easily take his dangerousness lightly. Have I told you about my new friend Cleo, by the way? It's been a couple weeks since I've been up here on the platform. I'd like to talk to you about I actually met Cleo 2.5 weeks ago, a little bit over that. She lives right near me. She is really, really cute. And my wife is beautiful, but this one, Cleo is very, very cute. A neighbor was so enamored with her and her particular cuteness, he and his family, actually, and this is a true story, were going around all the neighborhoods, so blocks around, posting pictures of Cleo and her cuteness on our street, on streets right around ours. Cleo is a cute little kitty, all right? And it's a girl kitty. It's a girl kitty who's tame because she lives in a home, apparently. But somehow 3 weeks ago, somebody let that cute out of the house, Cleo. So these neighbors began to post up all these signs with a picture of Cleo. You know, a cute little, white on the belly and gray on the top. Cute as could be. I mean, absolutely cute as could be. Posters everywhere of this cat with, "This cat means the world to us. If someone does not bring this cat back to us, our lives will end. Please find our cat Cleo." That's what the sign's basically, and then down at the bottom of that, they had a number to call. We have pets at our house. As of probably a year and a half ago, we would have had 2 dogs, 2 cats, and a tarantula. We've trimmed down. We have 2 dogs and a cat now, and 4 kids, which can sometimes waver back and forth from animal to human. But we have 2 dogs and a cat, and we know what it's like to have pets, right? I know what it feels like to have pets, and I can imagine if we lost one of our animals. We have before, and somebody found our dog. So I know what it feels like. And so when I saw this picture of Cleo, I said, you know what, if there's a way to find this cat, I'm going to start peeling my eyes for it. Well, Dateline, October the 1st, around 11 o'clock that morning, I'm outside. It's my Sabbath day, and I'm just resting, and guess who I see in my backyard? Cleo, padding around. So I try to, not run at it, but try to run her down. Well, she skits off, and I don't quite catch her. I go to the sign and I find the number and I call the guy. I said, "Hey, your cat is right here." It was just in my backyard. You might want to come and see if you can grab the cat. So they come. They can't find her, and basically, we all know at least this. The field of survey is shrinking because we know Cleo is somewhere in that general area. Dateline Tuesday, same exact day, October the 1st, 8:45. I'm returning from football practice. I'm driving down the streets to my house with my 2 boys and our neighbor who also plays football with us. And guess who I spot a street over from our house? Little cute Cleo, who's been gone for 5 or 6 days from her home, all right? So I have us all jump out of the truck. The truck's running, my door's wide open, and we're going to get this cat. And so we're actually at a neighbor away from our house's driveway, and we get it underneath the car. So I say to the guys, I say, "Listen, don't freak this cat out. Don't scream, don't yell, don't flush it out. Just lay in front of your part of the whole of the car, all right? Lay behind it on the sides. I'm going to get at it from the front, all right? Please, just don't freak it out." And I think it was Jack that asked a question like, "What if this cat bites us?" And I think I said something like this: "Come on, sis, this cat's going to bite and hurt us, really? I mean, don't worry about it anyway. I've got it from here." And boy, did I get it right after that. I came to find out. So I'm at the front of the car, and I'm laying down on my chest because they're blocking their spots on the car. I've got the front part of it, and I'm able to just reach far enough where I can use my fingers to let her sniff my fingers, and she does, and then she kind of gives me a little nip, but then I start petting her paws. And I do that for like 5 or 10 seconds, and one of these yahoos, I still don't know who it is, no one's fessed up to it, went, ha! So I'm down I'm down here like this. I dive at it, and with my cat-like quickness myself, end up doing the stupidest thing I could possibly do. I grabbed little Cleo, the cute little house cat that lives down the street, by the back paw. And it turned into a cartoon. This cat was, if you would have been there, all you would have seen is dust and those little things that you see in cartoons, because I've got this cat by the leg, and it's gotten me now by the hand. And so I'm just trying to do everything I can, because I want to catch it. But I guess if I'm a cat, I'm thinking 4 giants are trying to eat me. You know, that's what I guess that's, I can't, give her I got to give her a pass for that reason. Teeth, claws, fury. This thing probably goes about 30 seconds or 45, but it feels like it's like I'm being terrorized. That's what it feels like. It's going on forever. It was like, I've tried to explain to people what it felt like, what was going on at that moment, because I've had cats my whole life. I've been bitten by cats, I've been scratched by them, we've owned them. I've had to catch cats before. This was different. There was something about little Cleo, all right? So I've tried to think of how to explain it, and here's how I think of it, is like, it was like being Velcroed and staple gunned to high-speed hate. That's the honest truth. This cat was desperate, and I couldn't get off of it, and in some ways, it couldn't get off of me. It was going to bite as long as it was necessary. It was going to claw, because it had claws in all 4 of its feet. It felt like 400 feet. It was like, and so all I want to do is get on its neck. You guys have all carried a cat by the back of its neck, right? Well, this cat knows what I'm doing. It's been carried by the back of the neck before. I just can't get there, and so when I do that, it attacks this hand. And then when I try to get over here, it attacks that hand, and I can't ever get a position on this cat. So it's biting into me. It's been biting all along, and I just get it down, and poor old Cleo and I are just like, we're both wiped out. I'm looking down at her. I got her by the belly. She's got her teeth and her claws in my hand. We're catching our breath, and I'm looking at her, and she's looking at me. And I'm bleeding everywhere. I mean, I could see it. Both my hands it was literally covered in blood. And just as I have the cat down, Jack, I think, is the one, my oldest son, Jack, said, "Snap her neck!" Oh, we're going to go to all this trouble and then snap the cat's neck? And just as he says, "Snap its neck," the neighbor whose house this is happening at walks out. "What's going on here?" The guy says. And I said, I'm thinking, this looks ridiculous, and I'm wiped out. This looks ridiculous. "Sir, this is a neighbor's cat who is lost. She needs saving, and will you please save me? Will you save me? Because I'm in trouble here. I cannot get on this cat's neck, and it's eat me up." And so I'm laying there with my hand on her belly, and he comes over, and he said, "Let me see if I can get my hand on her neck, too." He tries it. She goes like this, and he bugs out. Bye-bye, Cleo. Cleo takes off. There's no more Cleo, just a lot of blood and bruising. Well, the next morning, I can't move my hands. And my ring finger feels like, it looks like a brat, all right? That's what it looks like. 2 days after that, after we're trying to figure out why this is going on, I end up in the hospital for 4 days. 2 surgeries, and if I could take my sweater off here, you'd see a PICC line. It's an actual line run into my body where 4 times a day, every 6 hours, my wife has to put an infusion of antibiotics into me every single day, 4 times a day, in the middle of the night and in the early part of the morning. Don't take beings that are dangerous lightly. There's a cute side. There's a merciful side. There's a sweet side, the part that you love to pet and loves to snuggle up with you, right? There is a cute side. There's that wonderful side. But there's a dangerous side to their nature. Both are important, and the reason why is because it keeps us both honest. Claws and teeth keep us honest in our dealings with the dangerous part of a cat. We must realize that God is both merciful and mighty. He is dangerous in a beautiful, wonderful, honest-making way. The fact is, it keeps us honest. If God were nothing but mercy, why would we pay attention anymore? Why would we care about 10 commandments or any kind of commandment for that matter? If all we just did is say, "Well, I guess that was wrongish. God, please." And he's like, "Oh, don't even worry about it." Meow. Don't even worry. If all he was is merciful and not mighty, then he wouldn't be God. We would be, because we're doing whatever we want to do, and it's all right. His mercy makes so much more sense and means so much more if we understand his might. I'm going to ask you to stand in a moment as we're going to sing about that mercy, but only because it makes so much sense in light of his might. Would you stand as we continue to worship?
Your